Hey guys, it's the real Brad Bell here. Thank you for tuning in. I just wanted to preface this show by letting you know I have a little fall allergies going on here today, so if I sound a little raspy or voice is a little bit off more than usual, that's why. Unfortunately, with all the things we love about fall, the cool crisp air, the hokey Halloween horror, it also is a tremendous change in season, especially in the South, going from warm to cool rather quick. So forgive me for that and enjoy the show.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
And here we go.
Live from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, welcome to episode 75 of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of the epicreview.com and proudly presented by the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. I, of course, am your host, the real Brad Bell. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for clicking play for a eagerly anticipated episode of the pod where we get to talk about what was number 2 on not only my list, but aka Andrew Stokes' list for our most anticipated movie of fall 2017, Andy Muschietti's It. But before we do that, we have a full show in store for you with what we've been checking out in Epic News. This isn't a point edition. Those numbers have been good, so thank you for checking those out. Speaking of checking things out, be sure to go to tpublic.com/user/therealbradbell. Get your Confirmed Epic Podcast merch. Get your hokey Halloween horror merch. We'd greatly appreciate it. So, let's go ahead and get into what I've been checking out this week.
Check checklist? Check. Double check checking of checklist? Check.
My wife Abby and I got a chance to check out the survival horror movie currently on Netflix from 2014, Backcountry. It's directed by Adam McDonald. And we kind of were browsing through the horror movies category on Netflix, trying to find something that we haven't seen yet. We've seen most of the good horror movies on there, and there are some good ones. We mentioned earlier House is October Built, Tales for Halloween. We've already reviewed those on the hokey Halloween horror editions of the podcast this year, but this looked like a little something different. Survival horror is its own subgenre, and the woods, guys, they freak me the hell out. So I find this scarier than a slasher movie any day. In fact, besides like woods, wilderness, survival horror, the only thing that really scares me, is the exorcism stuff, which is just a completely different can of worms. But I want to tell you, a bear has never scared me so much. I have not seen The Revenant. I know Leo's Best Picture winner I have not seen, and that's blasphemy considering I host a film podcast. Now, this is a Canadian movie. It was filmed mostly in Ontario, and it's based on real events that happened in 2005 in Ontario. To set the premise up, you have a couple who's been dating for a while. They go out into the woods. He wants to take her to, I think it's called Big Bear Lakes, the name of the location. She's never been on a hiking trip, and she is not crazy about going, but her longtime boyfriend takes her out there. What starts out fun quickly turns treacherous. His plans are to go out there and propose to her before things go awry. Bears are freaking scary, guys, and I think you kind of almost become numb to them in a way if you don't, because, I mean, you don't see a bear much on TV or movies, and to see the bear and this brutality and this viciousness, that really freaked me out. If I was rating this movie, I'd probably give it a good and a half. It starts out like great, and it kind of fizzles out the last 30 minutes or so. Of course, I'm not going to spoil it here. I loved it the whole way through. My wife Abby, the mother of Beagles, kind of got down on it about 30 minutes left to go and actually went to bed. So that was disappointing, and that kind of tells you that maybe this movie won't stay strong for everyone. But if you're into survival horror, you're into a new type of horror subgenre this Halloween, it may be worth checking out. Something I've been meaning to bring up on the podcast for quite some time that I've been checking out is a Planet of the Apes novelization called Planet of the Apes Firestorm. This is the prequel to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and the sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So, this was a adapted screenplay to novel. This was based on the original screenplay for what was going to be the sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And it was actually penned by Matt Reeves' script doctor, Mark Bombach. There's also one that's a prequel to War for the Planet of the Apes called Revelations, which I have not read yet, but I have bought from Amazon. Both of these are written by Greg Keyes. Guys, I'm a slow reader. Not because I can't read, I just methodically meander through things and sometimes get sidetracked, and I'll get to where I'm reading 2 or 3 books at a time and be like halfway through 2 books instead of completing another book. That's a real bad tendency I have. But when I started reading Greg Keyes' Planet of the Apes Firestorm, I could not put this thing down. Now it's short, it's only like 350 pages, but it really captures the downfall of the Bay Area in particular after the seminal flu hits there. It really talks a lot about Will and Genesis Labs and things of that nature. Will, of course, was James Franco's character in the first Planet of the Apes movie. You get to see a bond really develop between Koba and Caesar that you see in the movies, and it becomes consequential, especially as the movies go on. But I don't even know if the movies really do their relationship, their friendship justice, as much justice as this book does, rather. Now, the absolute best part of this book, and there's a lot of good things, is it's the backstory of Koba. Every 2 chapters or so, you get a Koba chapter, and it's from his point of view. You see what he goes through from birth to the time that he encounters Caesar in the Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And boy, does this create sympathy, does it create empathy. It really gives the whole Planet of the Apes film franchise a whole new feeling of stakes. It really enriches that plot, that rivalry, that fall from grace of Koba and Caesar's friendship. And if you love these movies like I do, I mentioned this may be my all-time favorite film trilogy. I highly recommend these books. They do a great job of really adding to things that are established by the time you get to Dawn. For example, by the time you get to Dawn, Caesar's married to Cornelia. They have one kid, Bright Eyes, and they have another kid on the way, and who was actually born in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So we get to see Cornelia and Caesar fall in love. Now, it's subtle, it's not in your face. This is such a good balance between character development from the ape side and the human side. Have decent human characters and kind of see how they view this whole flu epidemic and encounter with the apes that was being covered up by the local Bay Area government on the Golden Gate Bridge. I highly recommend it. I would give this book a confirmed grade and a half. I would have loved to have seen this developed into a movie. That's my only regret after reading this book is, damn, this series should have been 5 because they should have adapted Firestorm. And I'm sure I've heard Revelations is better, so if that's the truth, they should have adapted Revelations into its own feature-length film. Andrew Stokes is actually reading this book right now, so hopefully later on in the year and what he's been checking out, he can kind of give us his thoughts on it. But yeah, it's great, guys. Check it out, Planet of the Apes Firestorm by Greg Keyes. Now, let's go ahead and swing to a chock-full edition of Epic News this week. Let's start out with some very sad Epic News. Comic book artist Len Wein has passed away. He is one of the co-creators of Wolverine, and he's worked on several projects throughout the years. So let's take a brief moment of silence to dedicate to his legacy and memory. Okay, thank you for that. Let's go ahead and get into some happier epic news. This is going to be a lengthy edition. I'm going to try to mix it up between Star Wars and superhero news intermingled with other film news. So I try to do that on the pod because I don't want people who are maybe not as into those mega properties, which I know most people listening to this podcast are, but I don't want them to feel overwhelmed from that. So if I cover one Star Wars story and you're like, whoa, why isn't he covering this? That's why. So let's go ahead and start, though, in the MCU. James Gunn came out really early in the week and said that he wants Rocket and his backstory to take center stage in future MCU movies post-Avengers Infinity War. Rocket's been a big character, but he hasn't been up there to the level of Peter Quill. So as the Guardians movie go along, the way that I understand it, it looks like that how we've been getting Peter Quill's backstory, of course, played by the great Chris Pratt, we're going to get a lot of that as from Rocket's point of view, voiced by the great Bradley Cooper. I think that's interesting. Rocket's he's a very empathetic character, but I don't know if we need a ton on his origin. I would say I don't know how audiences would react to that maybe like 5 years ago. But considering where we're at now, I think it's pretty easy to know that they'll eat everything Marvel gives them up. And I think, not that this wouldn't be well done, because everything Gunn does is well done. It's just, I don't know about it. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. It kind of reminds me of what we were just talking about in Planet of the Apes Firestorm. I think about how much of not that Koba wasn't a good character, but he could have been a great to epic character if we could have got some flashbacks to his origins in those 3 Planet of the Apes movies. And if that's what they're doing here with Rocket, and he's a more likable character than, say, Koba in Planet of the Apes, I think it could work really well. So far, James Gunn has done great things, and I would never doubt him. Speaking of the MCU, Stan Lee has filmed 5 more Marvel cameos. So Stan Lee's 94 years old today. I hope he's going to be around a lot longer, but realistically speaking, especially after the passing of his wife, Joan, you just never know. I will be interested to see how people react to the first Stan Lee cameo after his passing, which I'm not trying to be morbid here, guys. It's just inevitable. I've met Stan. I've talked about that on the pod before. Such a fantastic guy. And he's as charming in person as he is on TV and in the movies. If you haven't had the opportunity to meet him, I know he's cut his con schedule down, but he is doing a lot of cons. Not a lot, but he is doing some cons through the end of the year. So if he's going to be in your area, pony up the money, get his autograph, meet him, because it truly is at this point a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you won't regret it. So let's go to NECA and some collecting news. NECA has announced they are going to do movie figures based on the film we're reviewing today, It. I'm excited about this. Now, the Pennywise stuff will be cool, of course, but I hope they do figures of the kids. This would be something that would get me back into collecting, at least for a line, and I would be a completist on this line. It really reminds me of Jerry Barbecue 17 Reed's collection of many things, but one thing that sticks out to me is when you walk into Jerry's house, he has a curio cabinet, very nice, very well lit, excuse me, and he has a lot of the 80s action movie stars, a lot of his wife Kristen's Nightmare on Elm Street, not Nightmare on Elm Street, she would probably not display that, a Nightmare Before Christmas memorabilia. Then he's got like a shelf of Goonies, and I think NECA did it. It may have been McFarlane, I'm not sure. And those look so great together, and I think that's the kind of display that these It figures, if the sculpting's done well, if they're provided with proper accessories, I think that's the kind of display they can make. So I was ecstatic when I heard that NECA was going to be making these. Hopefully, we'll be getting those pre-orders soon from BigBadToyStore.com. DCEU news, Margot Robbie was recently interviewed, and she says she has no idea the next time she'll play Harley Quinn. Another WTF moment from DCEU and Warner Brothers. How does your biggest star, when I say biggest star, I say the star who gave you the most profitable portrayal of a character in Harley Quinn, Suicide Squad bombs without Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, not know when she's going to be shooting as Harley Quinn again? Is that not a bad sign? Because we know we have this Joker Harley movie. We know we have Suicide Squad 2, or at least we think we know we have. But she doesn't know when they're shooting. Would anybody be surprised if tomorrow the DCEU just ended and they said, let's do individual movies? That may be the best thing at this point. I know I would not be surprised. Staying in the DCEU, Patty Jenkins, no surprise here, has officially signed on with Warner Brothers to direct Wonder Woman 2 out December 13th, 2019. I think every fan of Wonder Woman just breathed a huge sigh of relief because there was a lot of rumors of where Patty Jenkins could end up. She was on the short list for Star Wars Episode 9 potential directors, which we can get into later. Drew Goddard has been confirmed to direct X-Force, and Deadpool will be in it. I'm excited about this. I love Drew Goddard. I love Cabin in the Woods, one of my favorite horror movies of my lifetime, one of the most mind-melting horror movies there has been. And to see Drew Goddard get to play in the Marvel sandbox, because again, or have another opportunity to, I should say, because Goddard was originally linked to Sinister Six. I'm really happy for that guy, and I think he'll do great things. X-Force should be a lot of fun. You're probably going to get Cable, you'll get Domino, you'll get Deadpool. I mean, of course it would be epic if we got Wolverine. Probably won't, unless they're going to recast him, and I think it's still a little too soon for that. Maybe we get Warpath. It'll be interesting to see who they throw in there. Maybe let Lady Deathstrike. So a lot of potential here. The X-Men stuff seems to be doing really well right now after Logan, after Deadpool. In particular, this subgenre of a subgenre in the R-rated superhero movie department. So I'm definitely excited for that. Let's go to more Star Wars news here. Rian Johnson took himself out of the running to direct Episode 9. It was then that Lucasfilm, about a day or two after that, made the big announcement that J.J. Abrams would return to finish the trilogy he started, the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and that Star Wars Episode 9 would be pushed from Memorial Day 2019 to December 20th, 2019. I'm a huge fan of this announcement. I thought Force Awakens was a fantastic movie. Did it rehash plot elements of A New Hope? Yes, but you've heard this argument before. The prequels are not enough like the original trilogy. Not enough like A New Hope. This, when I say this, I mean TFA, The Force Awakens, was too much like the originals. It was an homage or a ripoff, people say. Which do you want? Would you rather it be completely different or in the vein of the originals? Plus, JJ had the very, very tough job of bringing Star Wars to the big screen again for the first time since the prequel trilogy, which was not panned. It made a lot of money. Star Wars fans who grew up then love it. I was older when the prequel trilogy finished. I was a senior in high school when Revenge of the Sith came out. So I love Revenge of the Sith. I really don't like Phantom Menace or Clone Wars. There's elements to love there. So I had no problem with what JJ did in TFA. Plus, when he and Lawrence Kasdan went back and rewrote the script, he was really trying to balance Han, Luke, and Leia, which I know there's not a lot of Luke there, versus the new cast, Finn, Ray, Poe, Ren. So, I thought it was a nice balance, the Luke stuff aside. Now, if this movie comes out in 2019 and there's a second Starkiller base, eyes will be stuck in the back of my head. They will be rolling so hard. JJ is, I mentioned on the Point episode we did when we were discussing potential Star Wars directors, this was always a possibility. He is another one of those that has such a unique visual flair when it comes to filmmaking. No pun intended with the lens flare there. But you see JJ shoot something, and although it may be very comparable to how Lucas, how Spielberg would have shot that scene, he has his distinct flavor of shooting. Again, that is something that not every filmmaker, including some great filmmakers, have. So, now if he gets booted off this, I'm going to start to really panic about Lucasfilm, because this is like the safe pick, right? You get going in a new direction here because you've been with Colin Trevorrow, an up-and-coming filmmaker. Didn't like it. Lord and Miller, young up-and-coming filmmakers. Didn't like it. Josh Trank, young up-and-coming filmmakers. Didn't like it. Cut a lot of Gareth Edwards stuff on Rogue One, although he stayed on. So let's talk just a minute about Colin Trevorrow. A Vulture report came out that said he was the most egotistical asshole. This was all anonymous on Vulture. As far as they reported, it was from an anonymous source, so take it with a grain of salt. But apparently, since Spielberg had chosen him for Jurassic World, and that movie became one of the highest grossing films of all time, he had an overly inflated ego. So he was just a pretentious ass on set. How much of that is true? How much is not? I mean, we'll probably know one day when the tell-all book comes out, or Kathleen Kennedy's autobiography, who's the head producer at Lucasfilm. JJ is the safe bet, but he's not without controversy. He and Kathleen Kennedy butted heads a lot on TFA, for those of you that don't know, over just smaller story details, apparently. I don't know what those were. Maybe one day we'll know again. Who knows? However, JJ has that, even more so than Colin Trevorrow, he's an acolyte of Spielberg. He's an acolyte of Lucas. And to have that in your corner, I think, with a little more longevity in the filmmaking world and in the television producing world, and to own your own production company like Bad Robot that's had a lot of success, gives him a little more clout than Colin Trevorrow. JJ was more of over a decade ascension, whereas Colin Trevorrow felt like an overnight ascension with Jurassic World and Safety Not Guaranteed, and apparently The Book and Henry, which is the worst freaking movie ever made. If you listen to people talk about it, I've never seen it. But yeah, JJ directing Episode 9, I'm excited. So let's talk a little bit more about some Stan Lee stuff here. Leo DiCaprio not only apparently may play the Joker, but he's really pushing to play Stan Lee in a biopic film. I think this would be fantastic. Lee, I won't say he lived fast and hard, because he definitely was very faithful and had a great long relationship and marriage of, I think, over 60 years with his wife, Joan, who recently passed away. May she rest in peace. But he was the Howard Hughes or the Hugh Hefner of comic books. I mean, he was just had this gravitas to him. And if you go back, and he still has it, but even if you go back and watch these interviews he did, or he used to go and visit college campuses in the 80s and 90s and talk about the importance of sequential art and the comic book medium, just the presence he has, that I could see Leo really capturing that. That just to me would be fantastic. Leo's great at capturing those characters that have that type of gravitas. Think Wolf of Wall Street, think Cobb. And yeah, I'd like to see this. We'll see how realistic it is. Speaking of realistic, we know that we can expect a new Apple TV later this month. Apple had their big conference this past week. And of course, the big thing was the iPhone X. Not even going to talk about that here. $1,000 phone. No, thank you. So, let's talk about the new Apple TV. I've been thinking about getting an Apple TV for a while. Don't know if I will, but if I do, I will go with this newer model. So out September 22nd, you get two versions. You get the 32 gig for $179, 64 gig, $200. Now that's internal memory. Of course, you got the iCloud memory. Here's the big thing about the new Apple TV. It's not only 4K capable, it's 4K HDR, high dynamic range capable. So it's going to make those colors really pop for you. But I think what was the coolest news is any movies you bought in HD 1080p on your iTunes library will now be upgraded to 4K for free. Awesome move by Apple. Great PR move. They need all that they can get. Also, 4K movies, which now, if you go buy a 4K Blu-ray, it's $25, $30. All 4K movies on Apple TV will be in the $15 to $20 price range. Here's what you got to consider. If you are a big enough of audiophile and cinephile to be buying 4K movies, that means you got a 4K TV, you ponied up a pretty penny, especially if you got one that's HDR capable. If you get a 4K TV, guys, you've heard me talk about it on other episodes. Make sure you get one that's HDR. I made that mistake in buying one that wasn't, and you really can't tell the difference until you get that HDR on that 4K content. But if you're someone who cares enough about audio and video to buy a 4K TV, aren't you going to want the maximum, absolute maximum audio and video quality? And we all know streaming cannot give you that. It can give you great streaming quality. You're not going to get lossless audio streaming. You're not going to get the most pristine picture streaming. You're going to get buffering. I don't care how fast your internet is. And it takes a lot of internet speed to run 4K semi-smoothly, let alone smoothly. So, if I'm someone, like I am, who is very concerned with audio and video of my home theater, I'm not going to buy this. Until 4K streaming really gets to where it can handle the optimal video and audio, I'm just going to stick with my 4K Blu-ray player, because I know while that may not be the cheapest route in buying Blu-rays, because you really can't rent 4K Blu-rays, you have to buy them, and that's $30, $25 a pop. I'm going to go that route, because if I've ponied up this money, I'm going to just pony up the money to get the best possible viewing option. That being said, if you're a casual viewer, let's say you went out, you bought a 4K TV because your old TV went out, this will be perfect for you. If you're a cinephile, probably not, so look for that September 22nd of this year. A lot of big news this week from the new Halloween movie set to debut from Danny McBride, of all people. We got an official release date, October 19, 2018. Beyond that, this was the most epic news to me. John Carpenter has confirmed he's returning to score this film. The original director of Halloween, for those of you that didn't know, scored all the music, including the iconic Halloween theme that is just synonymous with the holiday now, let alone the movie. Can you imagine what this means for horror cinema and horror just scoring? We could have another epic Halloween theme. At the very least, we could have a updated variation on the classic Halloween theme, which is something I never thought we would get in my lifetime, was another Carpenter score. I think him doing a score is just as significant as if he was announced to direct this film. And if the slashes weren't enough that we got already from Mike Myers, Jamie Lee Curtis is set to return. Don't ask me how. Jamie Lee Curtis is set to return as, yes, Laurie Strode. Image was released on social media yesterday of her at the original Haddonfield house with Jamie Lee Curtis on the porch and Michael Myers in the background. The hits just keep on coming. The slashes just keep on coming from this movie. I cannot wait. I don't know if I was excited for the Nightmare on Elm Street remake in 2010 with James Earl Haley, just because I like that character. This, I'm actually excited, not only because I love Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise, but I'm really excited because, I mean, Danny McBride, you can laugh all you want. Jody Hill's making this with him, by the way, his longtime collaborating partner on shows like Eastbound and Down, Vice Principals, on his movie debut, The Foot Fist Way, so his writing partner. But he is someone who holds this franchise sacred, so I think he's going to do it justice. Don't expect a comedy. Will there be funny moments? I mean, some witty moments from characters, yeah. But this isn't going to be scary movie Halloween. So I'm really looking forward to this October 19th, 2018. Game of Thrones news. They're going to shoot multiple endings for the finale. We don't know when they're shooting the finale, but apparently there's going to be no surprise here. Major character deaths. This is nothing new. They did this in The Walking Dead with the Negan season finale. They filmed multiple character deaths to throw you off the scent of whom actually got killed. So nothing groundbreaking there. I wish they'd have been like, we're going to film it this day. I'm more excited for a release date than I am about cinematography specifics from the final season of Game of Thrones. David Harbour as Hellboy, you know him from Stranger Things. We got a release date for that film of January 11th, 2019. And we got our first image of David Harbour. He looks great. Looks great as Hellboy. I should say first image of David Harbour as Hellboy. Not saying that David Harbour doesn't look great. No offense to that guy. But he does look great as Hellboy. Dude has gotten in insane shape. If you've watched Stranger Things, he wasn't in terrible shape, but he was kind of a rough around the edges, a law enforcement officer. It looks very similar to the Ron Perlman Hellboy. It's not some vast departure. So it's, that character has a very kind of set look. So I'm glad they're not trying to do anything too outlandish to differentiate themselves from the Ron Perlman, Guillermo del Toro version of Hellboy, which is very close to the comic version and the definitive look of that character. The only thing that concerns me here is the January release date. If there's not many dumping grounds for movies these days, Marvel's proven that by releasing Black Panther February 2018. Deadpool came out in February. Mass moneymaker for Fox. However, January is the one shit bowl for movies. So I'm a little concerned there. I'm wondering what they think they have on their hands. Is this going to be a cheaply made movie like an Underworld movie that gets dumped in January? Or do they just want to capitalize on nothing being there because there's blockbusters, it feels like, every other week now in Hollywood? Speaking of blockbusters, we may have one that can get nominated for Best Picture. Logan. Oscar screeners are beginning to go out to critics and members of the Academy in particular. And the first screener to go out and be sent to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is Logan. For your consideration, members of the Academy, can this get a Best Picture nom? I don't think so. Just not realistic. Could it get a cinematography nod for James Mangold, especially with the black and white version? Yeah, I think that's possible. Could Hugh Jackman get a nom for Logan? I think that's possible. But I don't know. I think Wonder Woman gets the big superhero push this year just because of how political the Oscars are. Not saying Wonder Woman is not a great movie. It's just not a Best Picture quality movie. But it will be a very strong, I think, anti-Trump feminist message at the Oscars, which I'm completely cool with. I think that's a good thing. We need that. We need female empowerment. But and it's nothing knocking that. I just don't know if Wonder Woman, and I don't think Logan is either. I don't think either one are Best Picture quality. So Speaking of best pictures in DC, Man of Steel 2, right, guys? I love Man of Steel. I'm on record of having the Mondo poster by Ken Taylor in my living room. My wife loves Man of Steel. I teared up in parts of that movie. Matthew Vaughn is in talks with Warner's and DC right now to direct Man of Steel 2. He also revealed in that same interview that he's writing Kingsman 3. Kingsman sequel comes out this coming Friday, so I'm excited to see that. We'll see if we get to review that on the pod. I want to see that and Mother. This is a match made in heaven, though, to me. Matthew Vaughn directing a Superman movie. Sign me up now. Where can I get in line? He'll probably be able to work on the script as well, because he always works on the script for most of his movies. Think about what he did for X-Men. What if he could do that for Superman? Just not reset everything, but make a small pivot where we keep the serious tone of Man of Steel, but interject some joy into it. I think his action set pieces, his character building would be, I won't want to say second to none, because I don't know if he's as good of an action shooter as Snyder is. I don't know if he's as good of a visual stylist as Zack Snyder is, but he nails character. Look at Kingsman. Look at First Class. I've never seen a relationship in comics covered so well as he had the Magneto and Charles Xavier relationship developed in X-Men First Class, which is probably my all-time favorite X-Men movie, that or X2. So I think this is good news. As far as Kingsman 3, that's probably ways down the line, but it's cool to think about the trilogy being capped off, especially if the second one is any good. Let's talk about some It news before we move forward with our It review, and that is the It Director's Cut is going to add 15 minutes to the Blu-ray. Now, the movie's already like a 2-hour and 15-minute movie, so they shot a lot of extra stuff with the kids, which is, as we'll talk about, some of the best stuff of that film. I'm excited. I love director's cuts just because it's the filmmakers usually, I mean, there's cases where it's not Blade Runner. It's usually the filmmaker's definitive cut. So, more Pennywise, more Losers Club. Yeah, sign me up, whether it's the It sequel or it's a director's cut. I hope this gets a 4K release from Warner's. It's up for pre-order on Amazon on Blu-ray right now with no release date, but nothing about 4K, so that's what I'm hoping for. One last bit of news from Disney and Star Wars. There's a new Star Wars comic out December 27th, Star Wars Crate. It's going to explore the origins of the new comic featured in The Last Jedi. This is the planet that is being, it looks like, mined by some pod racer look mines. The one that had the AT, or the new AT-ATs, I forgot what they're called, in the first teaser trailer where you see the red dust coming up. Apparently Leia and Luke had been there before, and I don't know when they were there. I don't know if it was post-Jedi, if it was in between Empire and Jedi, in between A New Hope and Empire, but they have been there before, so they're going to give some backstory on that. That will be very interesting, and it must be some meaty stuff because it's not coming out to December 27th, which is after when Last Jedi comes out. I think Last Jedi is December 15th. I'm just ready for a new trailer for this movie. There's too many Star Wars comics. I will read the trade of this because it seems consequential to the Star Wars films, but too much. Vader, I'm cool with. Star Wars, I'm cool with. We don't need a Star Wars comic for every droid. So, speaking of droids, let's roll forward like BB-8 into our featured review this week, which is the highly anticipated Andy Muschietti adaptation of Stephen King's masterpiece, It.
There you go. She's all ready, Captain.
Thanks, Billy. It's not like any time I've ever been in before. People die or disappear 6 times the national average. And that's just grown-ups. Kids are worse. Way worse.
We all float down here.
I saw something. There was this
Clown. Yeah, I saw him too.
look. It's all connected by the sewers. That's where it lives. What happened? Bill?
Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too.
Before we dive into the film, let's get into some stats for it. It was released September 8th, 2017, directed by Andy Muschietti, previously best known for directing the horror film Mama, starring Jessica Chastain. It's rated R. It's 135 minutes long. It's a Warner Brothers film. Stars Bill Skarsgård, the younger brother of Alexander Skarsgård, as Pennywise, the Swedish actor Bill Skarsgård. 85% on RT, universally well received, well loved. Only a $35 million budget, and it had a bank weekend at the box office in its opening weekend last weekend. It made $123.4 million domestically opening weekend, $179.1 million worldwide opening weekend. As of today, which is Saturday, September 16th, it's made $255.1 million worldwide, which is crazy for a horror movie. It's crazy for the first movie in a franchise or in a set of films, because we know there's going to be It Chapter 2. The hype around this movie is insane. I kind of wanted to start out with this, and I would be interested to hear what listeners say. Did they feel the hype going into this movie? Because I did. I don't think until I really looked into it that I realized how excited not just my wife and I, Abby, aka the mother of Beagles, were for it. My wife was so excited she actually started reading the book. I think she's about halfway done now. It's taking a break from it because it's just so much. Not the length necessarily, but the content's a lot to take in. A clown torturing kids for 1,100 pages. The hype shocked me when I found out that as far as most viewed trailers before the release of a movie in history, that first It trailer that came out last March holds that record. It surpassed The Force Awakens, and it is the second most viewed all-time trailer behind Fast and the Furious 7. Of course, there was a lot of anticipation and hype with that one going into it with the tragic loss of Paul Walker. As far as my experience with the story, I have not read the book. I had seen the miniseries in high school. I don't really recall it. I bought it on Blu-ray. I watched the first 30 minutes, and it was fine. I thought, I don't want to watch any more of this because I want to experience it either by reading the book, which I'm listening to on Audible right now. It's a 44-hour audio book. I'm about 5 hours into it, and it's great. The guy that reads it, I can't recall his name off the top of my head, but does a great job with the voices, does an incredible, creepy Pennywise voice. Nothing compared to what we saw in Skarsgård in this movie. But yeah, I don't want a TV miniseries to be my first initial adult experience of this story. I'd rather it be the Muschietti movies or it be the audiobooks. So the book is most people's favorite Stephen King book, despite being his longest book, again, at over 1,100 pages. Mama from Andy Muschietti, saw that in the theater, really liked it. That was when Jessica Chastain was really becoming an A-list star in Hollywood. She had just done Zero Dark 30. Then Mama came out. Mama was a really good movie. It was produced by Guillermo del Toro. In fact, a lot of the hype came from him as producer because nobody really knew at the time who Andy Muschietti was. Andreas Muschietti is his name, but he goes by Andy Muschietti, so that's why you'll hear me call him that in this review. Go check out Mama if you hadn't seen it, especially if you want a fresh horror movie this Halloween season. That would be a cool one to review on Hokey Halloween Horror as well. I highly recommend it. It's a good and a half movie probably. It's not great or epic, but it's different, and I was very interested to see what Andy would bring to the table as far as it was concerned. My wife was over the moon excited about this movie. She watched the leak scene with Pennywise in the sewer I don't know how many times. She watched this trailer I don't know how many times. Again, I mentioned she's been actually reading the book. She has 2 Funko Pops of Pennywise. So, I mean, we were excited going into this. She was a little more excited than I was. So let's go ahead and get into our review. Of course, like most all reviews, unless you're told up front on the Confirmed Epic podcast, there'll be a spoiler-free section, which we'll start out with here. And then we'll roll the reel forward to spoilers, in which you'll hear a film reel sound effect. And after that, spoilers are fair game. So my initial thoughts on it were, I love this movie. Absolutely adore it. It feels like an authentic coming-of-age story more than an homage to a coming-of-age story. Let me give you my best explanation of this. When I watched Stranger Things, in particular on the rewatch with my wife, because I saw Stranger Things when it first came out, I, like everybody, was caught up in the hype. This is the best thing ever. Upon rewatching it, it's great. Not as great as I remember it. I feel like Stranger Things is more of an homage to The Goonies or Stand By Me, which, for those of you that know, Stand By Me is based on a short story by Stephen King, which you can find out there. Stand By Me is probably my definitive coming-of-age story movie, if I had to pick one. Now, I want to say this, and this could be met with controversy. I didn't feel like this was an homage to a coming-of-age story like those. I didn't feel like it was mimicking movies like that. I felt like it was an authentic coming-of-age story. The kids, the characters, how well acted they were, was so well done that you never thought, oh, that's cool, it's like Goonies. No, you felt like this was its own thing. And I absolutely love that aspect of the film. I love the choice to sit this in '89, and they're going to sit the second part when they're adults in 2016, because Pennywise, as you know by the film, if you've read the book, he appears every 27 years. There's a lot of nods to 1989 in here. In the 80s in general, you see Street Fighter, Gremlins references, Batman 89's referenced a couple times in this movie. Lethal Weapon 2 is referenced. So I like the choice to go 80s, then 2016, 89, 2016 instead of 50s, then 80s like the book and the movie were, the original miniseries TV movie were. What's so crazy is in that book, the 50s are innocent and the 80s are this risque, edgy time period. Compared to what that was, the 80s feel innocent now, which is really crazy to think about. 89 feels like today what the 1950s would have felt like in 1989. So I think this was a good choice. It's not a nostalgia bomb. It's not like Jurassic World playing up all your nostalgic emotional feelings to make you feel something and maybe overreact emotionally to a film. If anything, the best way I could describe the nostalgia, the child acting, the child characters, which we'll break down here shortly, is it feels so authentic. As far as Skarsgård as Pennywise, incredible performance. Breathtaking, bone-chilling, whatever adjective you want to throw in there. His smile is absolutely twisted. I don't know if he's as scary as he appeared in some of the trailers, although those moments are in there. Now, there are moments where he is. Every time he's on the screen, he captivates your attention for obvious reasons. I've heard a lot of people complain he wasn't scary enough. What's crazy is I hear two complaints about this movie from opposite ends of the spectrum. I hear there's not enough Pennywise. He's not scary enough. I want more of that. Or I hear Pennywise takes me out of the movie and really destroys this great epic coming of age narrative of this film. See, I didn't feel either way. I felt they were balanced really well. Could I have used maybe one more frightening Pennywise scene? Sure, who couldn't? But this movie was already clocking in at 2 hours and 15 minutes. And it looks like we're going to get more Pennywise in the 2.5 hour director's cut that will probably be out, I imagine, by the end of this year, if not 2018 on home video. So Skarsgård was very good at flipping that switch from I'm luring you in, innocent clown, to I'm going to freaking eat you and kill you. And it wasn't a transition. It was just like, boom, full Pennywise right here. And it's freaky to see that happen because you don't know always that exact pinpoint moment when it will happen. My friend Evan Truelove, whose bachelor party we'll be celebrating later today. Shout out to Evan. Congrats to him and Jamie for getting married later this year. Big film fan, been on the podcast before, seen more movies than I have. Need to get him on the podcast more. He doesn't like jump scares, and he thought this movie had too many of them. Again, I did not feel this way. Were there jump scares? Yeah. There were 3 really good ones. One got me, which is saying something. I've seen so many horror movies. I know the pacing. I know the build. That jump scares rarely get me. So if it can get me, it's doing something. Because that means it's going to get a lot of other people who maybe don't watch as many horror movies as I do. I have a lot more to say about it, in particular the characters, and a few negative things. And also going to talk about as far as where this film ranks in the epic year of 2017 in cinema. But before I can get into that, I feel it would be necessary to get into spoilers. But before I do that, I highly recommend this film. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you think it's going to be too scary, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 5, as far as scariness, it's probably a 3. Whereas something like The Exorcist is a 5. Go see it just for the coming of age narrative. Unless you're deathly afraid of clowns, go see this movie. Because you're really missing out on one of the biggest cinematic experiences of 2017. And you're missing out probably on the best coming-of-age movie since Stand By Me. And I'll even throw Stranger Things in there. This surpasses Stranger Things by miles. I mean, Stranger Things is really good. Great. And I'll give my rating for this, of course, at the end. But before we do that, let's go ahead and roll the reel forward to spoilers for it, starting now. The spoilers for it starting now. Let's go ahead and get into more Pennywise stuff here. What I want to do in the spoiler section here is break down the characters and break down the Pennywise scenes. So, people say there's too much or not enough. Let's go through these and see what we feel after we do this. There's the opening sewer scene with Georgie. We saw some of this in the trailer, but we did not see all of it. And if you think you did, you're sorely mistaken, no pun intended. I mean, in this scene, Georgie goes up to Pennywise in the sewer, the whole thing with the boat. You know how it goes. Even if you hadn't seen the movie, which I don't know why you hadn't, and if you haven't, while you're listening to the spoiler section of this podcast, pause it, go see it, and then come back and listen to this. He being Pennywise, opens his mouth, rips and eats Georgie's arm off, pulls Georgie into the sewer. I should say he pulls Georgie, and his arm, rather, is laying in the street. It's raining. The blood is washing down the drain. A neighbor and the neighbor's cat sees this. It's funny to watch the cat see it. And this is a good use of using the innocence of animals to create sympathy and empathy for a situation and a character. Just really over the top, grotesque. I don't know if the movie ever meets that level of grotesqueness. It meets its eeriness, I would say, but this may be the most, as far as gore and brutality, one of the most the movie scenes has to offer as far as those aspects are concerned, but I think that's fine because it hooks you in. It lets you know the stakes right away. It lets you know the threat that Pennywise has posed to these kids, to this neighborhood of Derry right away, and it gets you settled in for this 2 hour and 15-minute epic that you're in store for, which is only about probably half of Stephen King's book. Speaking of that, I like the choice here to divide this into 2 parts. For those of you that don't know, in the book, it goes back and forth between what's going on as adults in the 80s and what was going on with the kids, the characters as kids. And I like the fact that Andy separated those 2 things, and because I think it would have been overwhelming. You'd have had to have a 3-hour movie. This movie already is a bit long at 2:15, but you'd have to have a much longer movie to capture that. That being said, I've heard from people who have read the book they don't like this because in the book, a lot of the adult scenes are informed by what happened to them as kids. So I guess that's just a preference, how you like it. I think people who read the book maybe don't like the definitive split between adult and kids. Chapter 2 is going to be the adult, but I found no problem with it. Again, I haven't finished the book yet, so let's get back to Pennywise the Dancing Clown. The scene that freaked me out the most probably was short and to the point. It is the scene in which you have Mike, who is a butcher in this film, or the son of a butcher, I should say, dropping some food off. I should say he's not a butcher. What am I saying? He works at like a sheep farm. They kill sheep. They spin the wool off. He's taking the lamb to the butcher. So my apologies. And when he does, he's walking in and he sees Pennywise in like a water tank with meat hooks hooked into him, and he's like swimming and moving so eerily. The physical presence, the physical acting that Skarsgård brings, whether it's here in the water or in the house, is just really what elevates this portrayal above a lot of, this is probably the most iconic horror character portrayal ever, besides probably Freddy Krueger, I would say. Now, I'm not saying that Skarsgård is Robert Englund, because he's not, but he does have a similar presence to him, which is funny because in the book they use classic horror monsters like Wolfman, the Mummy, the Frankenstein, and whatnot to have Pennywise take the form of to freak the kids out. Because in the 1950s, that's what kids were afraid of. Since Warner Brothers now owns New Line, and New Line is the studio that owned the rights to Freddy Krueger, Warner's now owns Freddy Krueger and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So there was talk about having Pennywise take the form of Freddy Krueger. I would have loved that because Freddy's my favorite slasher. That being said, I think it would have cheapened the movie a bit, maybe taken some people out of it. It probably would have taken me out of it as much as I would have loved it. I hope New Line does something good with Freddy Krueger now that they see when horror is character driven like this was, and like the best Freddy movies are, the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies are, like Dream Warrior, Dream Master, and Dream Child in the first movie and stuff, how successful horror can be. But that meat hook scene freaked me out. There's a painting scene. It was okay with Stan. You had this creature who came out of a painting. His dad was a Jewish priest. He's going through his coming of age, literally with his bar mitzvah there, becoming a man, the rite of passage in the Jewish community within the Jewish church. That was whatever. The sink scene. What an homage to Carrie here. You have Bev go into the bathroom. You've seen this in the trailer. Blood just spews out of the sink. It's freaky, but that's not even what's so freaky. What is really freaky is her dad walks in. She's covered in blood. The bathroom looks sickening, and he can't see it. But when the Losers Club comes over to help her clean up, to comfort her, they see it. And there's something very off-putting and interesting about an experience like that where the kids and the audience, or characters in the movie and the audience, can see what's going on, but certain characters can't. And it made for one of the best 80s tropes within a 80s period piece movie, and it gave us the 80s cleanup montage. Now, we didn't get Everybody's Working for the Weekend here, but that was the only thing it was lacking, and that was a good nod to 80s film culture there. Bill in the basement, this scene was played up in the trailer we played for you before we started our It review. This one's creepy. This is where it got me on the jump scare. I mentioned it did, and it's weird because I kind of knew this scene, how it was going to play out based on the trailer. And in this scene, Pennywise is in the basement that Georgie had been freaked out in at the beginning of the book It, and the beginning of this movie in the miniseries. And he hears Georgie, goes down there. Georgie says the whole "you'll float too." But I thought I was going to be freaked out by Pennywise very animalistically crawling toward Bill. But no, there's like a scene where Bill turns and Pennywise is just there, and there's like a boom bass drop. And that got me. And if it can get me, I know it got a lot of other people. Not that I'm some macho man, because I'm definitely not. I just know the pacing of horror by this point in my life. My parents let me start watching slashers in 7th grade. I don't know what that says about me or how it informed me as a film fan or as a person, but I have been exposed to them for a good while. The best scene of this movie arguably is the projector scene. You get glimpses of this in the trailer, but this was like classic 80s horror, body horror in a way. Here's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the Slug Freddy in Dream Warriors, which was on the European poster of that film, in which Freddy is eating the girl. It's not Nancy. I can't remember. It's played by Patricia Arquette, but I can't remember her name. Maybe it's Christina. Anyway, we reviewed that last year on Hokey Halloween Horror. You can find that on our podcast feed. So, and our YouTube feed. Just search Confirmed Epic Podcast. The projector's flickering, flashing. They try to turn it off. You've seen this in the trailer, but then the projector gets tilt over and it takes up like most of the garage. The shot widens and Pennywise begins becoming giant and crawling out of the screen. And it looks, I don't know how much was CG here, but it looks practical effects driven. It really does. It looks like classic 80s horror. And just to see that realism in a horror movie really got me excited as a cinephile. So that was one. Probably besides the climax in the sewers, the house scene where they go in to confront Pennywise at his home. Oh man, this has had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. Pennywise is torturing them. There was a scene earlier when a member of the Losers Club dealt with, I think it was Eddie. Eddie, who has the problem. It reminds me of a young Kevin Arnold from Wonder Years, Fred Savage. But he's afraid of sickness. He takes all these pills. He has all these allergies, supposedly, which we find out were placebo pills. His mom was just trying to keep him, nurtured. But there's a scene a couple times he's so afraid of sickness that he has to deal with a leper. And you hear of lepers growing up, and if you went to Sunday school or VBS or whatever, especially growing up in the South, we heard of lepers. And there's a lot of allegories for lepers in fiction, such as Grayscale and Game of Thrones. But to see an actual leper in a big budget movie, well done, was really eerie. And that was their first encounter at the house. But when they all go back as a group, the Losers Club, to the house, oh man, God, I love this part of the movie. I don't even want to spoil it too much here. I know you've seen it, but me talking about it, I'll give you my thoughts. I love the whole three doors. Very scary, or scary as hell. I believe that was it. And of course, Pennywise he's screwing with their minds, right? If they pick the scary as hell, they're confronting their fear, and that makes them stronger against Pennywise. Of course, if they pick the least scary, that empowers Pennywise. So it's cool to see them face their biggest fears as they navigate through this house. One thing that's very memorable in this scene is the kids are trying to get out of the house. They're all cornered. And Pennywise, I think this is in one of the later trailers, is like marching toward them. And he's snapping his fingers and he's stomping his foot. And he's jumping up and down, and it is just the physical presence that Skarsgård has as Pennywise and all of this glory on display here that it just makes this so memorable. And I love when the Losers Club just tries to stand up to him. It's like, we're not scared of you. I'm not afraid of you. And he's like, you will be. And you will be. I mean, he is freaky. He is absolute. Is he as scary as he came across in some of the trailers? Probably not, but he's a character that will stick with you and you'll think about when you leave the theater. And one of the other eerie scenes and eerie parts were the bully in this film. Now, the bully is played by, his name's Henry Bowers, Nicholas Hamilton. It's cool to see them face a more traditional fear in bullying versus this fear of Pennywise, which is more, I guess, trans-dimensional in a way. Again, they don't get into a lot of that here. Supposed to get into it in the sequel, we'll see. But to see the bully meet their Pennywise fear, the freaky ass scene where the bully kills his dad and Pennywise is on a TV, like on a children's show, saying, kill them, kill the Losers Club, kill them, kill them. Talk about off-putting, talk about eerie as crap. I think this was kind of done in the miniseries too in some way. Again, I hadn't seen it since high school in its entirety. But the bully was, man, I'm watching this and was I bullied some? And I mean, I was not a cool kid. I was not a loser. I guess I was just there. I was in between. But, I mean, did I get bullied? Sure. I've been bullied before, but this is ridiculous. I mean, this bully's going around with knives, carving his initials into people. That's not bullying. That's damn right assault, right? I mean, apparently the 80s were brutal on bullying, man. I guess these John Cena anti-bullying campaigns have paid off, but it's weird to see that realistic fear is just as scary as Pennywise. But the finale in the sewer, this is where some people have a problem. The whole "you'll float too" is taken in a literal sense. You think you'll float in the sewer, you'll float in the water, but no, Pennywise has been collecting these kids, collecting these objects of these kids for years, and when they go down into the sewer and see all these shoes and all these bikes and all these baseballs and baseball gloves and footballs and whatnot, you hear Penny the Beagle's just crying thinking about it. She misses her mama. So when you hear these things, it's not here, excuse me. Penny, you're throwing me off my game, damn it. Whenever you see these things, it's very, very just sickening to see the innocence of children robbed, those great years of them growing up. And I imagine if you have kids, I mean, we've all been kids before. If you have kids, that seeing those things would tear you up a little bit and even make you more empathetic. But I'm torn on the finale. It looked great as a set piece. It didn't feel rushed. It definitely took its time. Sometimes I wonder if it took too much time. They unite. They defeat Pennywise. They go in. They rescue Bev. All that. I thought it was cool seeing all the kids floating and seeing them be able to have peace. But I think once Pennywise is defeated, the finale really excels again where this movie excels as a whole, which is character. Pennywise makes a deal with the losers to, if they just give up Bill and let him have Bill, he'll let the rest of them go, and he will not bother them ever again. They'll be gone in 27 years, or they'll be adults, and he will leave them alone. They are still in Derry. And what's interesting is they think about it. I mean, it's realistic. They really think, do we want to do this? Is it worth it? We give up our lives. And there have been a lot of character moments, especially between Richie, who's played by the kid from Stranger Things, Finn Wolfhard, sorry, Finn. Excuse me. Where it seems like it could be believable they could leave Bill down there, but of course they don't. They gang up. They kick Pennywise's ass. He disappears, at least for the next 27 years that we know of. And the finale is great. It's not the best part of the movie. It doesn't compare to the opening with Georgie. It doesn't compare to the house scene. It doesn't compare to some of the smaller, beautiful character moments. Let's get into those. The characters are all memorable. Some people think there's too many. I think it was awesome to see the diversity in the group as far as the backgrounds of the characters, and you had a African American representation, you had female representation, so it wasn't just a pure white male perspective. So let's go through the Losers Club. Bill is played by Jaden Lieber. I thought it was a great performance. He was strong but vulnerable at the same time. And here's the thing, I wonder who they get to cast these as adults. I've seen cast as these characters as adults in the sequel. I've seen a lot of Dream List. We can speculate here if we want to. I'm going to throw a few names out there for some of the Losers Club, but not all. So Jeremy Ray Ben, he is the young Jewish kid. He's okay. He's the most forgettable of the Losers Club. Sophia Lillis plays Bev. She is definitely a type of Molly Ringwald allegory. She's even called that by Richie in the film, and she's great. She has the most serious plot of all the losers. She's dealing with sexual assault via her dad, which is just frightening, sickening, and makes your skin crawl. But again, it really plays up what these kids are going through and her juxtaposition compared to the other losers who all have it seemingly pretty good and are pretty blessed to be in middle class or upper middle class families, where she's definitely looks like lower class and just going through hell at home. So I would like to see Chastain play her. I know that's a big rumor considering Andy Muschietti worked with Chastain on Mama. And I think that would just be a perfect fit. So I've heard Molly Ringwald, I've heard Amy Adams, but I think Chastain's the best bet there. Finn, you got Richie. Man, best character of this movie. He will have you laughing your ass off. Sometimes I wonder if he's so funny he kind of takes you out of the horror of the movie a little bit, especially when he's cracking jokes in nervous situations. We had a couple of people in front of us who just died every time Richie was on screen, like they were watching The Nutty Professor for the first time. I understand that. I laughed out loud many times to stuff that Finn said on the screen, but I think sometimes it's too much and people's laughs linger. Maybe it's a bit of nervous laughter because they're scared, but people's laughs linger, and he's a little over the top, but he's definitely the most memorable character of the movie. Next up, we have Stan. He's probably my favorite of the Losers Club. He's not the best. I still think that's Richie, and then probably Bill and Bev, but Stanley, he's the new fat kid. Now, I was never the new kid, but I've been the fat kid. And just to see kind of his anxiety and fears as a young fat high schooler, how he deals with love and just meeting new friends. He's kind of a history nerd like I am. I was able to relate to him a lot. Wyatt Olaf plays him. He has a great, very entertaining obsession with New Kids on the Block. Again, there's another 80s element that's played up. I just absolutely love this kid. His fear always feels so authentic. His reaction to characters, his relationships probably feel the most authentic of any of the kids. So I really, really like Stan. Chosen Jacobs plays Mike Hanlon. Mike's a big character, especially in the adult stuff, because he's the one who stays in Derry and brings everybody back when Pennywise returns. Chosen Jacobs did a good job. He was the strong, quiet type. I won't say it's the most memorable character, but I think this will really, really be a much bigger role in the second film. As far as who I'd like to see there, I'd like to see Don Cheadle. Next up, we have Jack Grazer as Eddie. Eddie is the hypochondriac mama's boy who has severe allergies, or so he thinks. Love this kid. Love his fanny pack. Absolutely delightful. He is a young Ben Savage. I would love to see Ben come in. Is it Ben or Fred? One's Corey and one is Kevin from Wonder Years. I'm going to double check that real quick here. Fred Savage is the kid from Wonder Years. So we need Fred Savage. I guess Ben would be okay, but he reminds me a lot more of Fred than Ben. Fred Savage, Kevin on the Wonder Years respectively. And Ben Savage was Corey on Boy Meets World, which was the 90s version, I guess, of the Wonder Years. So I really, really like him. I want to see though Savage come in and play him because he was so reminiscent of him as a kid. That would be so great as an adult. I would really like to see that. The bully, Henry Bowers, played by Nick Hamilton, absolutely terrifying. He captured the dumbass bully trope. Jackson Robert Scott is Georgie Denbrough. The innocence, the sweetness, the vulnerability. He kills it. No pun intended, but he kills it. And he will keep appearing in dream sequences and in basically illusions throughout the film created by Pennywise. And every time he's on screen, he toys with your emotions. So, considering this kid's only like 8, Jackson Robert Scott, he absolutely nailed it here. I love the story about him. He went to see a screening of it on opening night. Which is crazy to think about kids this young watching this movie, let alone being in it. And he went in the yellow rain jacket holding the red balloon, and it freaked some people out. So I thought that was awesome. If there's any negatives about this movie, I think Andy Muschietti sometimes had some trouble shooting action. Some of the up-close scenes, in particular when they're in confined spaces like rooms in Pennywise's house, get a little incoherent. it's a small negative on the movie, and it's the first time he shot major action, so I imagine the sequel, that will be a lot better. I like the score by Ben Wallfish's. A lot of people don't like it. I think the score is more of an homage to something like The Goonies, or E.T. here. Very Spielbergian score. The score doesn't stand alone as much as the coming-of-age narrative stands alone. So, closing, I just have a few things to ponder here. Will the sequel be as successful without the kids? Well, here's the thing. We ain't got to worry about that because they're going to start filming this soon. They're going to go from adults and flash back to kid moments, which is weird to think about considering they didn't flash forward to adult moments here like they do in the novel. So you'll have the seriousness and the stake-driven plot of the adults of the Losers Club as adults, rather, and you'll still have that entertainingly hilarious at points kids experience dealing with Pennywise. Will they cast gnomes as the adults, I wonder? I think Chastain is not a lot, but I think it's going to happen as Bev. I hope they do, but again, somebody like Ben Savage, he's known, but it's not like you're casting Jim Carrey or something like that. Somebody that's just so known that it takes you out of the film. And most people don't even remember Wonder Years, even though it's on Netflix at this point. But he is on Friends with Kids, which is a good show. I just wonder how natural, though, how organically those flashbacks to the kids will be in the sequel. I hope. Is it going to be forced because people love those kids so much and because those kids were such a epic part of this film? Because if it is, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that just so we can see it. Now, if it informs the story, it has a plot purpose, I want to see it. If not, just give me the full-on adult version. There's nothing wrong with this being the definitive and only take on the Losers Club as kids that we get. It's also going to be interesting to see how big the budget for the sequel will be. It's $35 million, made that back tenfold. Opening weekend, it's already made $255 in a 1 week worldwide. $255 million, 230 of that was in its opening weekend, or 217 rather. I'm imagining Warner Brothers goes from about $30 million to 75 to 100 million for the sequel. I think the Pennywise stuff will be a lot more, I don't want to say over the top, a lot more grandiose in scale. I hope it doesn't take, again, I keep going back to that. Nothing really ever takes you out of this movie the whole 2 hours and 15 minutes. You're in it. You're enthralled with the characters, the story, the town of Derry. And I want it to stay intimate. Now, would I love to see some scarier Pennywise set pieces? Yeah. But don't forget to keep this character-driven horror, and I don't think Andy Muschietti will. I can't wait for the sequel. It ends and it says, "It Part 1, the end." And all you want to do is take that Blu-ray out and put the It Part 2 Blu-ray in. Only problem is, we're going to wait at least 2 years. If I had to guess, I'd say we get a sequel October 2019 at the earliest, probably September, October 2020 to be realistic. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've heard a lot of people say that they should wait 27 years to make the next movie. Well, first of all, financially, that's never going to happen. They're going to strike while the Pennywise iron is hot. But some people are saying if they don't wait 27 years, it's a cash grab. I don't, one of our listeners actually emailed me on this and said that, and we appreciate the email, said that Douglas is the name. Thank you, Douglas. Said that he thought anything before 27 years from now is a cheap cash grab. Why not wait to these kids are adults. Once, we don't know what shape they'll be in, if they'll even be around, God forbid. I mean, life happens, you never know. If at that point they would even want to do it, that's no guarantee. And again, I said for obvious financial reasons. I don't think it's a cash grab, because this is the definitive cinematic take of It and Pennywise. The TV miniseries was that, a TV miniseries. The book stands alone. I mean, the book's a sprawling epic in its own right. But this isn't a cash grab. This is the first legitimate adaptation of this book with a true budget, from a true studio, with true actors. I know John Ritter was in the first one, and he's great in that one. I think he plays Ben in the TV miniseries. A cash grab is the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street. That's been done. It's been done great by Robert Englund. It doesn't need to be done again. This really hasn't been done cinematically. So I don't agree with those complaints. I can't wait to get this on Blu-ray again. I hope there's a 4K release. I'm going to go ahead and rate this movie. I'm going to confirm it as no surprise by the end of this review. Confirmed epic. So, the big question here is, where's this ranked so far? There's been 2 movies going into it that have been above everything for me. Baby Driver and War for the Planet of the Apes. And I would probably go War, Baby Driver. Going into this, as we were walking to the car, which this is kind of crazy considering my wife was much more excited for this movie than I was. I told Abby, the mother of Beagles, that this was my favorite movie of the year. And it's going to be hard for something to top it. I'm going to go It, War for the Planet of the Apes, and Baby Driver. I'd probably have Get Out at 4, and after that, still with a lot more to go this year in cinema, it would be hard to say, but right now It's at the top, and it's going to be hard for anything to pass it. The coming of age story that is natural, that feels organic, that doesn't feel mimicky or an homage, sets this apart. The most memorable horror villain since Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger sets it apart from Skarsgård's both physical portrayal of Pennywise the Dancing Clown to his verbal portrayal. Every single character's great. The set pieces look great. The period piece aspect of it looks great. You feel like you're in 1989. So, with a few nitpicks, my only nitpick is when Muschietti shoots up close action. So much of the movie is so well done to really just bump it down to a great or even a great and a half, I feel like it's an injustice. Favorite movie of the year, I confirm it is epic. So go check it out again in theaters and buy it on Blu-ray. It's really worth it. So I want to apologize. I'm sorry we got this pod out a bit late. Again, I'm a school teacher. I'm back to work. I hate Andrew couldn't be on here. He's slammed. He's training somebody at work. So thank you for sticking with me solo. Again, I know I had a little choppy voice this time, fighting some fall allergies. Thank you for tuning in. There's a great content you can always find from us. You can find us on YouTube at Confirmed Epic Podcast. Find us on Instagram at Confirmed Epic Podcast. We post daily geeky imagery daily. Stardust app, find us at Confirmed Epic. Share your reviews with us on there. Find our shirts for the Confirmed Epic Podcast, tpublic.com/user/TheRealBradBell. Like us on Facebook, Twitter. Find me at the REEL Brad Bell, at The Real Brad Bell. Make sure you're checking out actionfigurebarbecue.com. Jerry's serving up hot and fresh toy reviews daily. A lot of Star Wars Black, a lot of Mezco 112. Again, we are proudly presented by the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. Find us there at thegww.com. Check out their bevy of Confirmed Epic Podcast. And, of course, find us at The Epic Review, thepicreview.com. Once again, from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, I'm the real Brad Bell, and we are out.
That's all I have to say about that. This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks, assemble!